بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As we continue this tremendous treatise entitled Fataawa al-Hamawiyyah al-Kubra by the great Imam Abu al-Abbas Taqi-ud-Din Ahmad ibn Abd al-Halim ibn Abd al-Salam ibn Taymiyyah al-Harrani Dimashqi, who died 728 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. At the time now is 7:10 p.m. Wednesday, August the 2nd, 2023, which coincides on the Hijri calendar, today being the 15th of Muharram. The 15th of Muharram, the year 1445, after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. As we continue in the explanation, you'll find they were in the midst of saying the statement of the great Imam Shaykh al-Islam, in which he conveyed the great statements of those of the past. And like we said, from the strategic ways that he utilized to establish the truth was to convey statements or to use evidences or use as evidences those who were from the deviant, or they had some type of Sufiya with them, or they had some type of ways of mysticism, in order to establish upon the opposition that these are your scholars. These are your scholars who you revere, and those who was given proper knowledge from your scholars are saying what we are saying. So you'll find that Shaykh al-Islam used this type of strategy in his book to establish the truth, which is from the most beneficial ways to demolish an argument, is to use people or statements of people who you revere, you hold in high esteem, in order to show them that these people who might have had some type of influence of those perverted ideologies such as Sufiya, and this person is saying exactly what we're saying. So if this is a person that you respect and you hold in high honor, and this is the statement that he's saying which agrees with what we're saying, why aren't you following it? Even though Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, as we know, was upon the affairs which were clear and the beliefs that were clear. So this was from the strategies. Even though those from the past whose name was Amr al-Makki or Amr ibn Uthman al-Makki, this is the statement that he's conveying. So that's what we were in the midst of explaining. The statement of Amr al-Makki, or his name is Amr ibn Uthman al-Makki, who has some Sufiya with him. He has some Sufiya with him. But he was from those who was given knowledge of the Kitab al-Sunnah. So Shaykh al-Islam is conveying his statement or mentioning his statement in order to use that as a what? Proof against the opposition. So as we continue to mention his statement, Amr al-Makki, like we were saying last class, everyone, and what he said absolutely makes sense. If you'll find that he mentions in the statement, Amr al-Makki, as we said from last class, he mentioned and said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has those attributes and has those characteristics, the characteristics of his essence, meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always has those characteristics. There was never a time when the characteristic didn't exist and then it came into existence. That is what? That is not befitting for the creator of the heavens and the earth, because it necessitates some type of deficiency or incompleteness. So the characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we mentioned previously and in the last class, excuse me everyone, let me fix my screen. The screen keeps going off. There we go. Alhamdulillah. Right. So you'll find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has characteristics, as we talked about before. Number one, characteristics of His essence. Characteristics of His essence, which is called Sifat Dhatiyah. We mentioned this in so many classes, probably about 20 classes. We mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has characteristics, which is called Sifat Dhatiyah, characteristics of His essence. You'll find that Ahl Ilm from them is from Shaykh al-Islam himself, and also Al-Allama Ibn al-Qayyim, that the characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of His essence are qadimatun qidam al-dhat. Qadimatun qidam al-dhat. Old, absolute oldness. Oldness of His essence. What does that mean? Meaning that they had no beginning. There was no beginning to those characteristics. Meaning that they were non-existent and then they came into existence. That is what? Not befitting for the creator of the heavens and the earth. So you hear this word qadim, or what they call qadim al-azal. You'll find that Amr al-Makki mentioned a statement such as that the characteristics of Allah's essence is qadim al-azal. Qadim al-azal. Qadim al-azal meaning old, where there was no beginning at all. That's all it means. Qadim al-azal. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has those characteristics that had no beginning to them. His knowledge is complete. He always had the ability to guide whom He wanted to guide. He always had the characteristic of forgiveness. He always had the characteristic of seeing everything, hearing everything. And He had always the characteristic of guiding who He wants to guide. Those characteristics had no beginning to them. So you'll find that Amr al-Makki goes on to say, بِصِدْقِ الْحَقَائِقِ. This is what we mentioned last class. صِدْقُ الْحَقَائِقِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those characteristics are true. Meaning they're not metaphoric. Or they're allegorical. Or they had a beginning to them. They are true. Then he goes on to say, لَمْ يَسْتَحْدِثْ صِفَةً كَانَ مِنْهَا خَلِيًّا. There was never a time, for example, where they ceased to exist and that after a time they came into existence. That, for example, and this is what he's going to give example of in a minute. I don't have to mention it. He's going to give examples. That characteristic had a beginning, or it was non-existent, and then after Allah created the creation, then those characteristics were there. That's nonsense. It says, كَانَ مِنْهَا خَلِيًّا. If you notice, everyone, what I'm mentioning, it agrees with the natural disposition of the human being. Everything I'm saying makes sense. Absolutely. Allah didn't have a beginning. His characteristics didn't have a beginning. There's no way that then He was able to forgive after He created the creation. All that doesn't make any sense. The ability for Allah to forgive was always there. The ability that Allah had mercy or had the characteristic of mercy was always there. These affairs did not come to place after He created the creation. And like we said, when we mention these matters and we bring this type of clarity, it absolutely makes what? Clear. It makes sense. Why? Because it coincides and agrees with the natural inclination and the natural instinct of the human being. So he goes on to say, Amr al-Makki, he said, أو اسما كان منه بريا تبارك وتعالى فكان هاديا سيهدي وخالقا سيخلق ورازقا سيرزق وغافرا سيغفر وفاعلا سيفعل لم يحدث له الاستواء إلا وقد كان في صفة أنه سيكون ذلك الفعل فهو يسمى به في جملة فعله كذلك. So he said, there's not a characteristic of Allah or a name of Allah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was void of, meaning that it wasn't there. Those names that we just gave, such as being able to forgive, these affairs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always had the ability. He always had that characteristic, and He always had that name. Then he goes on to give examples here. He said, for example, Allah was the Hadi. Allah was the guider, and He can guide. He was the creator, and He will create. He was the provider, and He will provide. He was the one that forgives, and he will forgive. So he's saying here that these names and these attributes never had a what? Beginning. Until the point where after a period of time, when Allah created, then he had these names and these characteristics. So that's what he's mentioning here. He's giving different examples. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was always the one who can what? Guide. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was always the one that could forgive. And that he was always the one that could what? Create. These affairs did not happen after a period of time. These affairs, these characteristics, and these names and this ability was already always there. And that's basically, in summary, what he's mentioning here. Then he goes on to say, and that Allah is fa'ilan sayafa'al. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that does. And that he will do certain acts. He will do certain characteristics of his actions. He said, then he goes on to say, لَمْ يَحْدُثْ لَهُ الْإِسْتِوَاءِ. He said that you'll find that the characteristic of ascension, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always had the ability to ascend. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always had the ability to ascend. That the ability was there. And it was always there. And that this characteristic of having the ability to ascend did not happen when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heavens and the earth. And we'll talk about the ability to ascend. The ability was always there. Is it clear, everyone, what I'm saying? The ability was always there. And the will to do it was always there. He said, except that you'll find إِلَّا وَقَدْ كَانَ فِي صِفَةِ أَنَّهُ سِيَكُونُ ذَلِكَ الْفِعْلِ فَهُوَ يُسَمَّ بِهِ فِي جُمْلَةِ فِعْلِهِ. And this is what we're going to explain right now. So I'm going to just read in English so we can save time. He said, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in his book, and your Lord came. It says it literally in the Quran, that your Lord came and angels will be what? Upon ranks on the day of resurrection. What's the action here in this verse? That Allah will come on the day of resurrection. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come on the day of resurrection. So the characteristic of coming on the day of resurrection, when he will come, that we'll give a little bit of detail in a minute. I'm just reading what Amr ibn Uthman al-Makki. Come closer. So he goes on to say, بِمَعْنَى أَنَّهُ سِيَجِي. The meaning is that Allah will come on the day of resurrection. All of this is clear. For anyone and any human being that hears this, it makes sense. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come on the day of resurrection. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have angels ranks upon ranks. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he will be above the Arsh. And there will be a throne that the angels will be carrying. And that Prophet Musa will be carrying one of the what? One of the legs of the Arsh. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be above. And that he will be above the throne. And that being above does not necessitate that he needs it at all. The creation is not like the creator. The creation needs to sit or recline upon something. Whereas the human being needs the chair. Allah is the opposite of what you think or what would be understood. The Arsh needs Allah and Allah doesn't need the Arsh. Is it clear, everyone? The Arsh needs Allah and Allah doesn't need the Arsh. So you'll find that the characteristic of Majid, that Allah will come on the day of resurrection, that the affair of coming on the day of resurrection, that ability did not just happen. That Allah at one time could not do it, and then he had the ability to do it. That all of that is what? Imperfection. And all of that is incompleteness. Allah always had the ability to what? Do these actions when he wants to do it. That at the time that Allah has set to do the actions, Allah will do it. Does not mean that right now, in this moment that we're in, everyone, that if Allah will, he could do it now. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, he could come right now. He has the ability to do it. So no one should think that just because the affair that Allah will come, that it's only for the particular time, which is when? The day of resurrection. Allah can do it right now. The ability is there. The ability is complete. And Allah has the ability to do that action. What I'm saying right now, you see how it agrees with the what? The natural inclination and understanding of the human being. When you hear that, it's what? It makes sense. That's how Allah created the humans. That the revelation that He sent down agrees with your natural what? Inclination. And agrees with your what? Sound understanding. These affairs are clear. So this is what he mentions. It goes on to say, Amr al-Makki. He said, فَلَمْ يَسْتَحْدِثِ الْإِسْمِ بِالْمَجِيء. He said, وَتَخَلَّفَ الْفِعْلِ لِوَقْتِ الْمَجِيء. I'm just read this. He said that action was put off to a time when Allah wants to do it. We just clarified that, which is when? The day of resurrection. But if Allah willed, He could what? He could do it now. If Allah willed, He could do it now. The ability is always what? The ability is always what, everyone? It's always there. The ability is always complete. If Allah wanted to do it, He could do it now. So no one should get the insinuation or the understanding that just because Allah put the act off for the day of resurrection means that He can't do it until that time. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes.
G. Then he goes on to say, فَهُوَ جَائِي سَيَجِي. That Allah is the one coming and He will come on the day of resurrection. So, he goes on to say, وَيَكُنُ الْمَجِيء مِنْهُ مَوْجُودًا بِصِفَةٍ لَا تُلَاحِقُهُ الْكَيْفِيَّةِ. He said the characteristic of Allah coming on the day of resurrection, He says, is present, meaning that the ability is there. By the characteristic in which there is nothing from the creation that is similar to that and that action. Nor no one knows how Allah will come on the day of resurrection. No one knows how He will come. No one knows how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come on the day of resurrection. Does anyone know? No one knows. So he's saying the kayfiyah is not known with the creation, nor does it resemble the what? How the human being comes and goes. Or comes rather. Let's keep it straight to the point. So the fact that a human being comes or approaches or comes does not resemble the what? How the Creator would do it at all. Is it clear, everyone? And that's what he's mentioning there. He said, لِأَنَّ ذَلِكَ فِعْلُ الرُّبُوبِيَّةِ. Now this is what he goes on to say. Why? Because that's an act of Allah's Lordship, in which the aql, meaning the mind and the intellect, cannot fathom at all. فَيَسْتَحْسِرُ الْعَقْلِ. The aql can what? Cannot imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how He will come on the day of resurrection, and how Allah ascends or descends. These affairs are way beyond the mind's capacity to fathom and understand. And like I've mentioned on so many occasions, how can you begin to understand how a Creator can hear everything at the same time? Everything in the heavens and the earth, Allah sees it and hears it. Can your mind comprehend that? In addition to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala having full knowledge of all of the languages that the human being speaks. And Allah understands all of it. And He understands their needs. And He understands their what? Their affairs. And understands their requests. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has full knowledge of it. Can your mind be able to comprehend a deity complete to the point where nothing escapes His knowledge? Not a movement in the heavens and the earth. Can your mind even begin to even understand that? That Allah can hear everything. Even things that we can't even hear that's taking place right under our feet, under this carpet. Allah hears it. And Allah sees it. Can your mind even fathom, begin to understand and comprehend that type of what? That type of affair. And that type of what? Power. If your mind cannot even begin to comprehend that type of power, how in the world do you think you can comprehend how He ascends? And how He will come on the day of resurrection? Way beyond the mind's what? Understanding. That we talked about in last class, maybe a month ago. That we mentioned is said from the other statement that we brought in Hamawiyyah. He said there is nothing the human mind can imagine, or anything the human mind can think of how your Lord is, except Allah is above that. You can think of the most powerful thing in your mind and try to imagine it, except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what? Way above that. Those type of matters is what one needs to comprehend and understand. So then he goes on to say, فيستحسن العقل وتنقطع النفس عند إرادة الدخول في تحصيل كيفية المعبود فلا تذهب في أحد الجانبين لا معطلا ولا مشبها وارضى لله بما رضي به لنفسه وقف عن خبره لنفسه مسلما مستسلما مصدقا. So then he goes on to say that the self of the human being will be cut off. He said when he tries to enter upon trying to find out how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. How's his characteristics? How does he ascend? How is he above the heavens? How will he come on the day of resurrection? How does he see everything? How does he hear everything? How is his knowledge so complete where it's not preceded by ignorance? These affairs are way beyond the human being's capacity to understand. The human being, their knowledge is what? Preceded by ignorance, not Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, lillahi al-amru min qablu wa min ba'd. For Allah belongs the affair from before and after. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his knowledge is not like the knowledge of the human being. The human being has to be born. And he's born ignorant. And he has to what? Be taught and learn. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not like that at all. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is knowledge. It was complete from before and after. And it is not preceded by ignorance. Can your mind even begin to understand that? Allah's knowledge is not preceded by ignorance, but the human beings is. Human beings have to be taught. Human beings have to be educated. Human beings have to seek knowledge. Your mind can't begin to fathom and begin to comprehend of a complete deity of worship that's knowledge is not preceded by ignorance. You'll find of what happened between Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam and Khidr, where Khidr taught Musa of how deficient their knowledge is. And Khidr had knowledge of a fair more than Musa. As it comes in the ayat of Surah Al-Kahf, in the last pages. What do you find in the last pages of Surah Al-Kahf? It said Khidr taught things to Musa about some of the secrets of how the great knowledge of Allah is and the predetermination, divine decree of certain affairs that you don't understand. You might perceive it as evil or Musa, but in actuality it's something good. And Khidr taught him just a little of the secrets of the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of affairs that were a good outcome, even though you perceived it to be something evil. Until the point where Khidr said at the end of the story, the knowledge I've been given Musa, and the knowledge you've been given is no more than that woodpecker putting his beak in the ocean and taking it out. That's to let you know the little bit of knowledge that human beings have been given in comparison to the complete knowledge of Rabbul Izzah subhanahu jalla jalaluhu. That's how complete and vast Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge is. Similar to what you see of the ocean, meaning in that particular example, but Allah's knowledge is greater than that. And it's complete. How many of us can imagine the vastness of an ocean in comparison to a woodpecker sticking its beak in the ocean and taking it out? Just a drop of water. And Allah's knowledge is greater than the ocean and greater than the creation. Rather, it's complete. So how can you begin to think that you'll be able to comprehend how Allah ascends, how Allah descends, how Allah will come on the day of resurrection? Way beyond your mind's capacity. And that's what the Ahl-Ilm and the Amr al-Makki is mentioning here. So he goes on to say, he said, فَلَا تَذْهَبْ, don't go فِي أَحْدِ الْجَانِبَيْنِ. He said, based upon this, don't go too far to the right or too far to the left. Don't go in one of the two affairs where you go now too far to the right, where you're mu'attal, where you negate all Allah's names and attributes, you negate it. Nor too far to the left, now you're resembling Allah's attributes with creation. He said, be pleased with Allah of what He's pleased for Himself subhanahu wa ta'ala. And stop at the revelation where Allah sent down, either in His book or either in the authentic sunnah of His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, stop there. He said, submit and surrender and believe. وَلَا مُبَاحَةَ التَّنْفِيرِ وَلَا مُنَاسَبَةَ التَّنْقِيرِ. He's saying basically be in the middle. He said where now you go to the extent of denial, or you go to the extent, of course, or go by resembling, or by negating and removing the characteristic. So now we have to explain it. So these are the affairs, brothers and sisters, where it's very important to have knowledge of how powerful Allah is. You have knowledge of the Creator, you'll fear Him. You'll fear Him subhanahu. It will still fear the creation. And you will honor subhanahu wa ta'ala and show reverence and submission to His affair, to know how powerful your Lord is and how great He is subhanahu. Those affairs, everyone. So let's keep going. So now we'll go with Amr al-Makki, that he goes on to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fa'ilan sayaf'al. That Allah does and He will do. What does that mean?
Do what He wants.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does what He wills. And the affair of the actions of Allah is connected with what everyone, to His ability and the will. Meaning, the ability is always there and is complete, and He does it when He wills. Allah does it when He wills. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Jayyid. For example, so we just finished the characteristics of His essence. We talked about that, right, everyone? Meaning that before Allah created the creation, He always had the ability to create. Before He created the creation and after He created the creation. Allah will always have the ability to what, everyone? To create. Another example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who guides. He guided, He had the ability to guide before He created the creation, and He had the ability to guide after He what?
Created.
You understand? And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives. And that the ability to forgive was always in His ability what? Before He created the creation and what? You see how it makes sense? Doesn't it make sense, everyone?
No.
It's not confusing. Even though people tell me online, or certain people say, oh, these are way above people's head. People told me this. It says these affairs going up in people's minds. All you have to do is take a little time out to listen and review, and you will come and realize that these affairs are what?
Clear.
They could be what? They could be understood. I sent you. Right. So the characteristics of His essence. And I just gave some of the examples. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after He creates the creation, like we said, He will forgive His servant. Even though Allah had these abilities of able to forgive and create, all these affairs were known with Allah. Were known with Allah that He was going to create a servant that was going to commit sins.
No.
He had full knowledge of it. That He was going to create a creation that has flaws. Is it clear, everyone? He's going to create a creation that has flaws, and that He was going to commit a sin, and that Allah will forgive him. These affairs are clear. Allah has full knowledge of who He was creating, full awareness of the creation He was creating, and what it needed to sustain itself, and what it needed in order to carry out His daily affairs. Allah granted it sight, hearing, a mouth, teeth, faculties, legs, walking, so that you know that our Creator is what? Fully knowledgeable of what He's creating. Right, those are the characteristics of His essence. Those are some examples, not all of them, but some examples. For example, another example of His essence, Allah's seeing everything. Allah hearing everything. There's never a time except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always seeing everything. There's never a time where Allah stops seeing and then He starts seeing everything. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes.
There was never a time where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala heard or He didn't hear and He started hearing everything. Those characteristics were always what? And always what? Complete. And there was no beginning to it. And they will be eternal, meaning there will be no ending to them. These affairs are clear for anyone. When you hear the people of innovation speak, that's confusing. Saying that, oh no, Allah doesn't have these characteristics, rather they're metaphoric. Not in reality that Allah does such and such. But metaphorically speaking, that's when the confusion starts to set in. Like, what are you talking about? However, you'll find that the knowledge here, which Ahl Ilm present, especially at the head of them, Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, that it was clear. clear and agrees with the human being's natural inclination. When they hear it, it's like, oh, that makes sense. Absolutely. Fine. So then he goes on to say, now after the characteristics of which we just mentioned of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his essence, now we mention the characteristic of his actions. So Amr ibn Uthman al-Makki, the Shaykh al-Islam, continues his statement by saying, he said, our Lord does. He does and he will do those acts. And that actions are connected with his what, everyone? His ability and his what? His will. Is it clear? Yes. His ability and his will. Meaning he has a full ability to do it. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will what? He wills to do it. He can do it right now. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had put these actions for certain times from them, and that he will come when? On the day of resurrection. Right, so let's keep going. From the actions, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had full knowledge that he was going to create the heavens and the earth. And in those 6 days, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, and he had full knowledge of it, that he will ascend above the what? Above the arsh. After that. All these affairs was known with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were not preceded by ignorance, for example, that Allah didn't know he was going to do it. Is it clear, everyone? Yeah. Those affairs does not agree with the completeness of our Lord. Allah had full knowledge of these matters. This type of affair, what they call ascension, hadal istiwa, the characteristic of ascension, which is connected with his ability. That ability was always what? There. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did it at a time. Is it clear, everyone? He did it at a time. There was a time when he did it. And that affair is connected with his will and his ability. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does this at a time when he wills to do it. And Allah said that clearly in the Quran. He's the one that created the heavens and the earth within what? What's the time frame? 6 days. It says clearly in the verse. 6 days. After the 6 days when he created the heavens and the earth, Allah, out of his infinite wisdom, particularized the throne of what? Being above it, by ascending above it. Not necessitating at all resemblance of the creation ascending above something, where they need that thing or they sit upon that thing. That's only for the creation, not for the creator. The creation needs to sit on something, where they need that thing that they're reclined upon. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the total opposite. The Arsh needs Allah. Allah does not need the Arsh. Is it clear, everyone? Allah is above the Arsh. At the same time, Allah what? Does not need it at all. Allah does not need anything he created. Rather, the Arsh, the heavens and the earth, the angels, the human beings, and everything that's in the creation needs him. Not the opposite. Is it clear, everyone? The angels need Allah. The throne needs Allah. Everything in the heavens and the earth needs Allah. And Allah does not need what? Nothing. That is an ijma' and a consensus. That I hope that everyone understands that point. Because that is part of your belief. That is part of the aqidah of the Muslim. Allah is self-sufficient. He doesn't need anything. And if you understand that point, you will know that Allah does not need Jesus, the son of Mary. He did not need the prophets, and he didn't need to die on the cross in order to forgive the creation. If you understand that point, you will understand why Christianity doesn't make sense. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could forgive, and he did not need to have a child to die in order to forgive the creation. All of that does not make any sense. That's the reason why those affairs and why the people are leaving it and abandoning it. Because it doesn't make any what? It doesn't make any sense. Allah had to die and be crucified. He had to be humiliated and spit on and all those other affairs. And allow his prophet to be humiliated in order for the creation to what? Be forgiven in atonement of their sins. It doesn't make any sense. So those affairs, what we say, everyone, where it says at the end, of course, these affairs of the istiwa, of the ascension of Allah, the ability was always there. But it did not happen until a specific what? A specific time. The thing that we want to emphasize is that the ascension of Allah is a characteristic of what, everyone? His essence or his actions? Which one? His actions. And that's connected with his what? His ability and his what? His will. And that Allah does it when He wills, how He wills, and at the time He wills. Clear?
Yes.
Jayyid. The characteristic of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being above is a characteristic of His essence or action? It's His essence. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always above. Allah is always above. Even when He descends, He's above. Way beyond your comprehension. Allah is never mixed with the creation. Never. Just because He descends does not mean He's mixed with the creation. Or merged with the creation, or you became unified with the creation. When Allah descends, at the same time, He's still what? Still above the creation. طيب. The affair of ulu was a sifatun dhatiyatun qadimatun qidam al-dhat. The characteristic of Allah being above is a characteristic of all absolute oldness or oldness of His essence. What does that mean, everyone? Because I mentioned this and I explained the statement. What does that mean? What does that mean? This absolute oldness or oldness of His essence, meaning
it was always there.
Ahsant. It was always there. There was no beginning. Allah is always what? Above. Always above the creation. And that there's no beginning to it.
Right.
And there's no what?
End.
There's no ending to it either. The characteristic of ability, knowledge, hearing, seeing everything, hearing everything, having knowledge of everything, and have the ability to do what He wants, subhanahu. And other than that, for those characteristics which are known, we just already mentioned it. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes.
However, in fact, we'll suffice with that explanation. So let's move on to the ayah. Allah will come on the day of resurrection. However, if you look in the Quran, it says, وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ وَالْمَلَكُ صَفًّا صَفًّا. Right, everyone? It said Allah came. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala use the past tense? Because it's to put emphasis that it definitely is going to happen. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes.
That the affair is muhaqqaq. That is definitely going to happen. And it's definitely going to be executed. And it's definitely going to carry out. Everyone is going to meet Allah on the day of resurrection.
It's already started.
Exactly. It's like it's as if it's already started. And it's on its way to what?
End.
That's going to be the ultimate end. And that affair is established without no doubt in it. That's the reason why Allah used the verb which is in the what? Past tense. Is it clear? All of these affairs, brothers and sisters, you hear them, it's like, that makes sense. The knowledge of the people of innovation, they're the ones that will make your iman weak. Why? Because they come with affairs that don't make sense. And they say things that don't agree with your fitrah. Doesn't agree with your natural disposition. Rather, their way of thinking actually makes our Lord incomplete to say He doesn't have these characteristics. Or they're not real. Rather, they're allegorical or they're metaphoric or what have you. Fine. So he goes on to say, because we was explaining the statement of Ahmad al-Makki, he says, بِمَعْنَى أَنَّهُ يَجِي فَلَمْ يَسْتَحْدِث الْإِسْمِ الْمَجِيء بَلْ كَانَ فِي عِلْمِهِ أَنَّهُ يَجِي. He said, بِمَعْنَى that Allah will come on the day of resurrection. That the name of coming on the day of resurrection, this affair just didn't come into existence. Meaning, that Allah had full knowledge that He was going to set a time where He was going to what? Come on the day of resurrection. Meaning that Allah didn't know at one time and then He decided, you know what? I'm going to come on the day of resurrection. Is it clear? Is it clear? That affair does not befit the Creator. It's always been known. That affair of not knowing or something that, I didn't know this was going to be the outcome, or I didn't know I was going to do this. That's for us, the human beings, not the Creator. In addition to that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always had the ability to what? To come on the day, or to have the characteristic what they call Majid, of coming. Is it clear?
Yes.
So those are two things that one needs to understand. Number one is, no one should say, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not know he was going to come on the day of resurrection, or that there was an affair or a time that he said that the knowledge then became known. Oh, you know what? The day of resurrection, I'm going to come. You understand? Yes. That's number one. That affair is negated. Number two, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always had the ability to what? To come on the day of resurrection. Or to come at any time, At any time. However, when Allah does it, it's for a specific what? Time. And that time is what? The day of resurrection. Is it clear? You'll find that the great Imam Shaykh Muhammad al-Jami says, Allahu qadir ala yusaf aw yaf'al هذا الفعل قبل يوم القيامة الله أكبر ولكن أخر المجيء لحكمة يعلمها لوقت المجيء وهو يوم القيامة افهموا هذا جيدا ولم يستحدث الاسم بالمجيء كما قلنا في غافر وفي هاد وخالق وقس على ذلك ولكن تخلف الفعل هو المجيء إلى وقت المجيء وهو يوم القيامة. He said Allah has the full capability, is fully able, and that He always had the ability, the characteristic, and that He had the ability to do that act before the day of resurrection. However, He put the affair of coming due to some wisdom that Allah has knowledge of, that we don't know the knowledge of, but Allah has the knowledge of it. Due to some wisdom, that the time for when He will come will be the day of resurrection. He said, understand this point, and that this name or this affair of having the ability to come did not just what? Just start. Meaning that the affair of Him having the ability was always what? There. Was always there. He said, similar to how we have said about the affair that Allah is the all-forgiving. He's the one that guides. He's the one that creates. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always had the ability to do what? These particular affairs of guiding, creating, forgiving. However, the affair of when Allah will come, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set a time for it. And that time is the day of resurrection. Due to a wisdom that He knows and a wisdom that we do not what? No. That we don't know. So the affair goes on to say, وَيَكُنُ الْمَجِيء مِنْهُ مَوْجُودًا بِصِفَةٍ لَا تُلَاحِقُهُ الْكَيْفِيَّةُ وَلَا التَّشْبِيهُ وَهَذَا كَمَا تَقَدَّمَ وَيَكُنُ الْمَجِيءُ مِنْهُ يَحْدُثُ وَيَحْصُلُ الْمَجِيءُ مِنْهُ. So he goes on to say that affair of the characteristic of coming is always been there, meaning the ability, and that He had the description of that particular action, that He is the one that He has the ability to come, or the act that He will do at a certain time. He said, however, that action, no one knows how it will be done. No one knows. And we gave the examples of how these affairs are way beyond our what? Comprehension. And it doesn't resemble what? The coming of the human beings. How we come or how we go, those affairs are negated in regards to resembling how Allah will come on the day of resurrection with the coming of who? Of the human beings, or of the creation, So he goes on to say, مَجِيئُهُ لَيْسَ كَمَجِيءِ خَلْقِهِ وَيَكُنُ الْمَجِيءُ مِنْهُ مَوْجُودًا فِي عِلْمِهِ. He said, in addition to that affair that Allah will come on the day of resurrection, that was always in His knowledge. That wasn't preceded by what? Ignorance. Allah had full knowledge and awareness what was going to take place. And the characteristics that Allah will do at a certain what? At a certain time. So let's go on. So we finished. Alhamdulillah, we almost finished this particular paragraph. He said, now listen to this final statement that he said, Rahimahullah. Amr ibn Makki, Amr ibn Uthman al-Makki, the Shaykh al-Islam was citing. This is a tremendous book that Shaykh al-Islam wrote. This is Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah. So he goes on in Hamawiyyah to say, conveying the statement of Amr ibn Uthman al-Makki. He said, لأن ذلك فعل الربوبية فيستحسن العقل عقل البشر وتنقطع النفس عند إرادة الدخول في تحصيل كيفية المعبود. He said, because that is the action of the Lordship of Allah. Meaning, we know that the Lordship means what, everyone? Allah's actions. Rububiyyah. Rububiyyah is what, everyone? The actions of Allah. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's actions. Notice that all these affairs are tied in. The rububiyyah, the uluhiyyah, and the al-asma wa sifat. All of them are connected. Right, so let's keep going. He said that the self of the human being is cut when he wants to now enter upon of trying to comprehend Allah himself and his characteristics. You cannot begin to comprehend something that has no beginning. It's way beyond your comprehension. How do you think you can put in your mind a complete deity that has no beginning and no ending? Can you begin to comprehend and understand that? No beginning, no ending, whose knowledge is not preceded by ignorance, sees everything, hears everything, way beyond a human being's comprehension. If you can't understand that, how do you think you're going to understand how Allah will come on the day of resurrection? How will you begin to think that Allah ascends? How Allah descends? How in the world can you think you can begin to fathom these characteristics? If you can't even comprehend his essence, where he has no beginning and no ending. Can you imagine? Can you even put that in your mind? Absolutely not. Something that has no beginning and no ending? Way beyond a human being's comprehension. Way beyond their understanding. He goes on to say, سواء كان في ذاته أو في صفاته يستحسن العقل البشري. He says, so whether it's in his essence or in his characteristics, the human mind is way beyond their fathom or their ability to understand. That they will be able to fathom or understand these affairs of how Allah's essence is or his characteristics. Rather, you'll find the great statement of the great Imam Muhammad al-Jami used to say this in a lot of his lessons in Aqidah. He used to say, أن العجز عن الإدراك هو الإدراك. He said, not having the ability to fathom it is fathoming it. No. Not having the ability to understand or comprehending it is comprehending it. Very, very profound statement. Is it clear, everyone? Yes. Not having the ability to fathom it or comprehending it is comprehending it. Is it clear? يعترف أنه عاجز عن إدراك كيفية ذاته. Person now, he's what? He's admitting that he has the full incapability of trying to fathom how Allah's essence is or how Allah's characteristics are. That is fathoming it and that's understanding it. إذا أدرك هذا العجز عن درك الإدراك هو الإدراك. The last thing he says, now this is the last thing he goes on to say. فلا تذهب في أحد الجانبين جانب التعطيل وجانب التشبيه. Don't go off in one of the two extremes. To the right side of the right side of the extreme where you're negating all his characteristics, and then the other side of the extreme where you're resembling them with the creation. Don't be معطل ولا مشبه. يحتمل أن يكون معطلا حالا من فاعل تذهب. That you will now fall into being a negator, saying no, it's impossible that Allah does such and such. And then you negate it. Or saying it means something else. No, Allah can't descend. Allah doesn't ascend. Allah will not come on the day of resurrection. It means something else. He said, don't go off on one of the two extremes. Do not be a person that negates, nor be a person that resembles Allah to creation. Saying that Allah descends, his descension is like my descension. How Allah ascends is like me climbing up this mountain. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come is like me walking from this place to that place. Is it clear, everyone? Yes. So he's saying, do not go into one of those what? Two extremes. يحتمل أن يكون خبرا لكان المحبوب مع اسمها. We already talked about that. He said, be pleased with Allah of what he's pleased for himself. And stop at his revelation. وقف عند خبره صلى الله عليه وسلم. Stop at the revelation of the message of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam about informing about his Lord. And be submissive, surrendering, and firmly believing. ولا مباحة التنفير قبل أن يقع في المباحثة التي تنفره عن الحق. He said, for you now fall into something or enter in an affair that will alienate you and take you far away from the truth. And it will take you away from the correct path. Just as it's happened to a lot of Muslims that fell into deviated, perverted ideologies concerning their Lord pertaining to his names and his attributes. He said, and do not be like munasabat al-tilpiri, al-tilpir alladhi yuqi'uhu fi at-tashbih. And do not now try to now say that my way of understanding his characteristics is by resembling them with the creation. That's the way I understand it. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes.
So he's negating both of those affairs. And that will stop. Stop here. Is it clear or is it not clear, everyone?
It's clear.
So inshallah, any questions about now? He's going to get into next week the affair of what happened with Prophet Musa.
Which part?
The story when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Musa when he seen the fire of the bush or the tree.
No.
And he's going to speak about that next week. That even though Allah spoke to him, Allah was still above.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that next class. And what happened with Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Any questions about the lesson, anyone?
No. It's clear.
Those are the affairs that we said, through these type of affairs, you learn how powerful Allah is. You know your Lord, and your iman grows.
Yes.
The affair is dangerous on the opposite side of the spectrum when the people of innovation speak. It can cause the opposite effect. It'll cause confusion, and what comes along with confusion is eventually what? Weak iman, and what eventually weak iman leads to is apostation.
Yes. Because you think you were equal.
Exactly. Not only that, it's confusing in the mind. When you have no surety of Allah, because you're confused about your Lord.
Right.
Allah is not above, He's in me, He's in the wall. So now a third person thinks that, they're like, that's doubtful. And then what comes as a result of it? Either your iman will be extremely weak, or you could even result to apostation. That's the dangers of bid'ah. And being around His people, and what? And embracing their beliefs. It will subject you to doubt. And you die in that state is extremely dangerous. Dying in the state where you meet Allah in the state of doubt is one of the most weakest and the most dangerous forms or states that a human being can meet their Lord upon. Where you're in a state of doubt, or your faith is extremely weak, or if you have any iman at all. May Allah protect us from all those affairs. We'll stop here, inshallah. Sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.